Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. All right, everyone, we're going to jump in. Good afternoon, and thanks for being here. My name is Dana Parsons. I'm the Director of Grants and Professional Development here at the Maryland State Arts Council. I encourage you, if you do not already, to please gather something to write on and something to write with, as we'll be doing a bit of reflection throughout the first hour today. And please excuse in advance the doorbells. As new people come in, it just pulls my voice back a bit for about a half a second. So if I'm going in and out, it is just for the beginning as people are beginning to enter. I would like to let you know that we are recording this first beginning session today, just for anyone who cannot make it and would like to access the information afterwards. And I would ask that you remain on mute unless you are speaking during that time. And we also ask that you do not share your screen. I'll be presenting for this first hour today, so please do not use the screen share button. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can access the chat box, and we'll be monitoring the chat throughout today's session as well if you'd like to communicate that way. And you'll also be able to see the participants list by clicking the people with the heads. So that's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen as well. And in the bottom center of your screen, you'll see the microphone button to turn your volume on and off, the camera button to turn your camera on and off, the raise hand feature, which is in the center. Feel free to use that if you'd like, or we always encourage popping right in. And there's closed caption available there as well. Please note that they are computer generated. So that being said, we're going to jump right into our content. We have a lot to cover in the next 55 minutes, and I am so excited that all of you are able to make it today. So today is our regional summit kickoff event, which looks very different virtually than, of course, our hoped plan, which was to be in person. From 12 to 1 today, we're going to be working together in terms of differentiating between responsiveness and reactivity. So what do those two things look like? What do they feel like? And how is your art showing up in either of those categories? From 1 to 2, you'll be able to engage in an art making experience based on your choice and discipline. You don't necessarily have to be experienced in that artistic discipline to choose that course. So we'll let you know a little bit more about those when we get to the end of this session so that you can follow the correct link. And then we'll come back to this main session with everyone from 2 to 3 p.m. to hear some updates from our collaborators. There is so much going on in the arts in our state, and we're so excited for you to hear from everyone and also to have a reminder of those resources that you may need. So how is the Regional Summit regional, you may ask? Well, from here, after today's kickoff event, we'll be hosting a series of 6 sessions beginning October 20th and ending November 22nd. Those 6 sessions will highlight an organization in each of Maryland's 6 regions that are excelling in attributes of the Aesthetic Perspectives framework. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar, the Aesthetic Perspectives framework is a way to evaluate artistic programming and decision-making based in social justice and based in arts for impact. And that document, originally formulated through Animating Democracy, published by Americans for the Arts, is the basis of the evaluation mechanism for the Grants for Organizations application. So we'll really be uplifting the work of 6 organizations kind of as a case study for you to be able to engage with them about how they are connecting with the attributes and how those attributes are really showing up in their work and in their communities. So we're excited to kick it off on October 20th with the Baltimore Rock Opera Society. Aaron Keating will be with us to share the incredible work that his organization is doing. So we'll be in touch about these sessions, so stay tuned as we get a little bit closer. So we'll begin today's session with some grounding documents. We begin all sessions here at MSAC in this way in order to frame our work forward and provide a why. So our equity and justice statement: the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. MSAC and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination, regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. Our vision and mission connected to this statement: the vision to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts, and how we do this through our mission: advancing the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. Connected to this vision and mission, we have 5 strategic goals: to increase participation, provide intentional support, build capacity, leverage connections, and bolster Maryland arts. In our work here at the Regional Arts Summits and throughout the 6 sessions that follow today, we're really looking at goals 1, 2, 4, and 5. So really aligned with our goals for the organization. So we're excited to embrace that work together with all of you. And finally, anytime we gather collaboratively, we embrace and welcome these creative meeting actions. So I'd welcome you to think about these and think about what's resonating for you today as we are about to jump into some discussion and feedback. So to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, Engage with everyone's presence as a gift. Acknowledge that together we know a lot. Enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry. Share your idea and trust that it will be heard. Use I statements. Focus your language on the task at hand. Hold one another accountable with care. Apply yes and. I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it, and to balance speaking and listening. So with that, I invite you to set your space. There's a lot of virtual engagement, and engaging virtually is very different than it is in person. So maybe this means setting your space in your physical room. Are you able to eliminate any distractions? It is approaching lunchtime. Do you need a snack? Do you need food? Do you need a tea with you? I encourage you to nourish in whatever way feels good to you. And is there a way that you can provide more physical comfortability? Whether that means sitting, standing, stretching, taking more breaks. I encourage you to do whatever feels right to you today and to honor what your body's asking. And also now, how do we set the space in our being? Do you need to close out your inbox in the back? Can you give yourself a break to just focus on one task for the next 50 minutes? And what does that mean to connect, to be present and to be able to connect? Breath is always a really great tool, and we'll enter into a grounding exercise using that in just a moment. And to focus on just a moment of gratitude from us, for all of you, for being in this space with us today, this virtual space, and maybe something that you may be feeling gratitude for in your own space. So now, as we make a commitment to be present in the space, we'll connect all together to our breath. If it feels more comfortable to you to turn off your camera to close your eyes, I invite you to do so. Otherwise, of course, feel free to keep it on. So find a comfortable seat or a comfortable standing position if you're standing. So legs are uncrossed and both feet are connected to the earth beneath you. Relaxing your arms and allowing your hands to fall into your lap or at your sides. And sitting tall here, rooting your sits bones maybe to the chair beneath you, I invite you to close your eyes. Taking just a moment here to connect to your breath. Maybe this is the first time you've slowed down yet today. Connecting with your senses, what you might be hearing around you, what temperature you might be feeling with your skin. And finding this groundedness will take 3 deep inhales and exhales. So exhaling completely, emptying of anything that you don't need, and taking a deep inhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, holding at the top for 2, 1, exhale for 5. On your next inhale, breathing all the way through the bottom of your feet, up through your toes, so that it fills every space of your body that's asking for it. And on the exhale, maybe this one is a sigh out. Maybe it's through your nose again, letting go of anything you don't need for our time together. And one more like that, deeply inhaling, filling up the body. And exhaling completely, letting go of anything that won't be serving you for our time together. Coming back to your normal breathing pattern here. Maybe it feels good to keep the inhales and exhales long. Maybe your natural pattern is a bit shorter in breath. And just coming back to this anytime overwhelmment comes into your space. I'll count backwards now from 5. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes to return to the screen. 5, 4, and 3, 2, 1. Thanks everyone for your participation. So let's hear about you. Please use the chat for this. We are a larger group today. So feel free to share any one sentence about yourself. Maybe it's something that brings you joy. Maybe it's the last time you belly laughed. Maybe it is your sitcom character that you relate most to. I was recently told I was a combination of Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation and Jonah Sims from Superstore. So I'm working with that. If you are joining us from a specific location in Maryland or are affiliated with an organization, please feel free to add that information or anything that's really calling to you today. Again, to make you feel more present in the space, what would you like to share with the group? Go ahead, we'll take 1 minute here just to do some thinking and pop something into the chat. Thanks for those of you who are already there. So just calling out some things I'm seeing in the chat. Flowers, thanks, Carla. Joy from successful work from Mary. I see some Prince George's County, dogs, babies, families, pottery, art. Nature, art, wine. Thank you, Sonia. Great, some organizations here, some familiar names, some new names. Great, thanks everyone for engaging. So let's jump in. I don't know about you, but this is how many of us have been feeling lately. It's just this kind of array of emotions without a crystal ball, and with all of this uncertainty. Are we feeling sad? Are we feeling confused? Are we jumping up and down for joy for some of the success in our work? Are we halfway, 3/4 way underwater? Or have we just lost it completely and we're in a fit of the sillies? So really, I find myself all over this map of dogs. And so we're here to say that we're hearing this from a lot of people and it is all okay. Hopefully our work today will be able to separate some of the anxieties and some of the overwhelmment from moving forward on a path of creating impactful art. Hopefully with that distinction and that separation, that clarity will allow us to focus on the center dog and feel maybe more of a balance with those around. So our agenda for our next 45 minutes is to dive into some experiential work together. We'll do some reflection and identification. That will lead us into some discussion. In what ways are you excelling, and in what ways can your art improve or your creative process improve during this transitory time? And we'll make some very purposeful connections to next steps in the journey. So here's our inspiration for today, and really our discussion is going to surround these two ideas. In terms of the arts community, how are we being responsive, and then how are we being reactive? So to define these two pieces a little bit more, when we talk about being responsive, we're talking about being thoughtful in process, approach, and solution. So really throughout the entirety of the creative process, from ideation all the way through to fruition. We're being responsive by being inclusive in decision-making. Again, this entirety of the process shows up, and throughout any programming that we may be offering as an artist or as an arts organization or as a school. And we're being responsive by being in tune as listeners when needed, observers when needed, and or creators when needed. So thinking about when and how those roles might be more applicable to our work. Versus reactivity, which is kind of fueled by immediacy and this need to get it done. noting a problem and then jumping into fix without giving this thought to process, approach, and solution. And we'll find too that the more we kind of discuss it today a little bit, this reactivity is really connected to burnout. These, 70, 80-hour weeks, a lack in capacity, a need for clarification among priorities. So today, as we gather together, I would like to be able to lift up responsive stories from all of you, so that way we can begin to think about that work more deeply in our art making, and lessen the centeredness of any reactivity. So just to provide a framework here, this is our creative process map. It's the horizontal version from the Maryland State Department of Education Fine Arts Office. So thinking about that responsiveness can show up in all parts of this process, from concept or ideation through that exploration phase of drafting, to elevation. How do we refine and reflect something that we've put out there? Assessment, is it ready to go? And then all the way through to some sort of product, whether that's involved in a presentation or not. And so thinking about being responsive in each of these pieces, rather than isolating it to one or the other. So before we move into some reflection and sharing, are there any immediate reactions or responses to these thoughts? Anything that's resonating immediately to share with the group? Feel free to use the chat, or feel free to use the raise hand feature, and then you can unmute and hop right in with some vocals. Anything coming up for you with this immediate information? Dwayne, jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Dana, for hosting this event. One of the things that I am a little disconcerted with, it's kind of like Carol Dreyer's idea of mindsets, and that's to say that clearly the first grouping, being responsive, is like, let's put a check, that's good, and the second group, being reactive, is bad. So this is kind of presenting a black and white, what to do, what not to do. And I'm wondering if there isn't more area for more shades of gray.
Thanks for that, Dwayne. Yeah, absolutely. The overlap is pretty consistent. And so I think today, as we hear from individuals about the responsive work, it will just allow us to increase our awareness of what's feeling good and what's not feeling good. So that way we can find that balance. Maybe we find, and I see this too in the chat, Scout just wrote, reactivity gets me into the studio, and the rest is reflecting and responding once I'm there. So how beautiful that there's already this marriage into that creation of artwork. So thanks for lifting that up, Dwayne. Yeah, Karen, jump in.
Okay. I agree with Dwayne that I find it's a combination. I work very well under deadlines, and I tend, as an oil painter, I tend to never finish things. It's never, when is a painting finished? Well, ask the artist, it's never finished. But if you have a show to enter or something, then I finish it. So it's sort of a combination for me of these two things. I need to get it done, but then I also would like to be thoughtful about doing it.
Thanks for that, Karen. Valerie, one more, and then we'll move on. Go ahead, Valerie, if you'd like to unmute and jump in.
There we go. I'm working with a monitor today, so having the there we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm working with a second monitor today, and so it's throwing me off. God, what did I want to say? Oh, I have accepted the fact that I am horrible with deadlines. So I have given everyone the permission to set false deadlines for me and to not tell me when the actual real deadline is, because if I know when the real deadline is, I will take advantage of that regardless. So I have, and I'm tired of apologizing for it. It's just, I'm 47 years old. It's been the fabric of my life for so long that it's just like, just tell me, just lie to me. Just gently lie to me. Tell me things are due earlier than they really are. Know that I will miss the first deadline, but that's just where I'm at, and that might be an overshare. But I still feel guilty and shame. I still feel shame, even though I'm trying to acknowledge that this is who I am. I still feel shame that I struggle with deadlines. So anyway, that has seemed to seep into, well, not seep into, I have become more and more cognizant of it as we have lived in this pandemic space.
Thanks for that, Valerie. Yeah, and as we move forward today, our discussion will be less about the logistics and more about the whole process. So thinking about deadlines, if they work for you, great. If they don't, great. Thinking about that as more of a logistical tool that could help assist creation of work or creation of art, but rather thinking about the full depth and breadth of the creative process. How do we bring thoughtfulness, inclusivity, awareness to that full process as we move forward? So thank you for lifting that up as well, Valerie. All right, everyone, let's jump in a little deeper. So in our time together today, we're going to explore three perspectives of this. The first being connections and collaborations, a way that we've seen a lot of artists and organizations excel during this last 2 years, really. Elevation of programming, and then using responsiveness as a tool for reflection. So our structure for investigation and discussion will be the following. We'll begin with a 2-minute journal entry based on a prompt. So I'll give you silence to think for a full 2 minutes, a rarity these days. And during that 2 minutes, I invite you to maybe jot down some thoughts about reflections or actions, or a way that your work has operationalized these ideas and these themes. And as you're writing, feel free to take any form that you'd like. Maybe it's language-based, maybe it's narrative, notes, bullet points. Maybe it turns out a little bit more artistic. Maybe there's a free write, maybe there's a poetry format, or maybe it's not language at all. Maybe what's coming to you now by being present in the space is more of a visual. Maybe it's a sketched out graphic, or maybe it's a hybrid of one of the two. So the first prompt for thinking is exploration around this idea of connections and or collaborations. So thinking about what connections and or collaborations have supported responsiveness for you as an artist or for you as an organization, and how are they successful? So these connections and or collaborations can occur in a number of different ways. Of course, first and foremost, they're occurring in the community. So have there been connections and or collaborations within the community that have supported this idea of responsiveness, even if it engages in some level of reactivity? Again, going back to what Scout said in the chat, it could be reactivity that gets you to connect with a specific group, or another organization within your community. And then it's more thoughtfulness and more responsiveness that then gets you to a different kind of goal, product, or outcome. It could be across organizations or across artists, or it could be internally. Within an organization, maybe there are increased collaborations among staff members that have really proven to support responsiveness. Again, this awareness of role. When do we take this specific role as a listener, an observer, a creator? How do we increase inclusivity and access points, entry points to the work that's happening? And how are we thoughtful throughout the entirety of the creative process? So we'll enter now into a 2-minute journal entry. And then after that, we'll hear from maybe 2 or 3 people about any thoughts. All right, everyone. Don't worry about time. I'll time you and I'll let you know when we have 1 minute left. Here we go. Taking the next 30 seconds to wrap up any thoughts and find a good stopping point. Anything that came up here for sharing, feel free to use the chat or feel free to use the raise hand feature if you'd like to chat verbally. Yeah, Scout, jump on in.
Hi. I like I said, I think reactiveness gets me into the studio. And then I spend time reflecting once I'm there. And about 2 years ago, I started out by creating an ad agency with my cousin. She did copy and I did the graphic design. And we wanted to use, our family connection to build a creative career. She ended up passing suddenly from a fentanyl overdose. And after she passed, I spent a lot of time really reflecting on her death and sometimes reacting through painting and drawing, doing a lot of writing and a lot of learning. And then later, the Crown, which is in Station North, has they have a gallery, and they we're finally getting back to doing shows. So they reached out to me and said, hey, here's some space. So I wanted to use that to focus on my cousin, Diane, because we had gone to that bar together. And I used all of that reflecting and connecting to sort of contextualize and operationalize what I learned so that I could use that connection with the crown to contribute to the community. So I ended up doing an installation piece of a medicine cabinet that had free fentanyl test strips in them, about 100. And we so they were all gone by the end of the exhibition. So that means 100 people got fentanyl test strips. And so now I'm working on basically a bigger version of that project that will be sort of like little free library style houses with fentanyl test strips in them. And that's my contribution to this.
Thanks for that, Scout. So the responsiveness was in community with the gallery in Station North, kind of in order to come together over this shared passion and shared awareness and shared cause.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's a problem that is, I think it's 83% of overdose deaths in Baltimore City are due to fentanyl poisoning or some sort of synthetic opioid. And so it was identifying a common problem in the community and then figuring out a way to respond to that. What I can actually do, because I can't give away clean drugs or like needles or something like that. But what I can do is give away test strips and make sure that people are able to test. And that I felt like was the best responding I've done in a while. Definitely.
Thanks for that, Scott. And thanks for your vulnerability and sharing all of that. Thank you. Some other really great things happening in the chat. Columbia Pro Cantare, an example of how CPC used a social event to collaborate in a meaningful way to inspire our community was when we performed the concert celebrating women composers, our March 2020 concert, which celebrated 100 years of women's suffrage. We partnered with a local middle school treble choir who performed 2 important songs by women composers. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And other things in the chat too. Anyone else to share any thoughts verbally before we move on? Or if anyone else adding to the chat would like to share more about that. I'm specifically interested in hearing the thought process behind the collaborations or the connections to allow that content then to lift up. So for example, thinking about Columbia Pro Cantare, what was it about the local middle school and your connection there that was a thoughtful approach in that collaboration that then allowed the work to be seen and heard and experienced in a different way? Not to put you on the spot, more of a reflective question. Anything else here? Oh yes, jump in. Your unmute button is on. There you go.
Got it. Okay, to answer your question, that school was very near the venue where we were going to perform the concert. And through a mutual connection, we got in touch with the woman who was the teacher there at the school for that the treble choir. And we talked to her about it. She was very excited because one of the songs we were going to do required, said that you could have a choir with it. And then she said, oh, we're already learning that one. And there's another one by another composer that we think would be very appropriate too. These were both contemporary composers. So that just worked out beautifully. They don't always work out that well, but that one did.
Thanks for that sharing. So similar to Scout's experience, this shared passion over the content or over the intention of the art kind of brought those two collaborators together
Yes.
through the connection. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here? Has anyone experienced a connection or a collaboration with an organization outside of the arts that allowed responsiveness to flourish in a different way? Jan?
So I'm unmuting and trying. There we go. Hi. So as I just put in the chat, one thing that Imagination Stage has been doing has been to collaborate with non-arts organizations. I just put in the chat that we've been collaborating with the Department of Health and Human Services in Montgomery County, specifically the Street Outreach Network, to reach newly arrived migrant children from Central America. So kind of using arts integration and the expertise of the social workers who work with the Department of Health and Human Services to reach these young people in a way that they were kind of missed. Especially we started this in 2014 when sort of the first wave of unaccompanied minors came in, and with Montgomery County and environs being one of the biggest places of resettlement. And we've been able to do everything from, working on a play to visual art to all kinds of ways for them to find out how to share their story and process it. And it's been really exciting.
Thanks for that, Jan. And the highlight of bringing in those students throughout the creative process. Thanks for that. Pablo, good afternoon.
Hi, thank you, Dana. I'm here representing the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council. And I think we had a collaboration with Mission of Love Charities, which is a larger social services nonprofit here, works primarily with the homeless. And they have several meetings that they do with their community, and they bring them together for special events. And we collaborated on a Mother's Day event where we brought in artists that we work with, and they worked with the children while they were there with their parents to create Mother's Day cards and other items for the family. And out of that, we actually created a stronger bond, and we're collaborating on other arts, bringing in the artistic component as a creative outlet, and connecting our instructors with the students.
Thanks for that,
so
Pablo.
that's where we're able to collaborate. Thanks.
Yeah. And super responsive in, again, all parts of that creative process. I want us to move on to the next one to have a little bit more sharing and just looking at our time as well. And we've kind of started to dip into programming as well, as those connections and collaborations, especially within the community, lead us to elevation of programming pretty organically. So thinking now about what changes to your arts programming or your services or your content have been made in order to elevate the work. Again, thinking about this, has it been done in the community? Has it been done across organizations or across artists? Or has it been done internally within an organization? So we'll again take a 2-minute pause here for you to actively think about any reflections, actions, or operationalizations that have occurred in terms of the programming of your organization or the work that you're creating as an independent artist, or as a school or as a university. And again, however this reflection shows up for you in a journal format is totally up to you. Maybe it's language, maybe it's a visual, maybe it's some notes on your phone, whatever's kind of calling to you today. So now thinking about elevation of programming, programming services content. We'll take 2 minutes here to reflect, and then we'll do some sharing. Taking the next 30 seconds here to wrap up a thought. And as you're wrapping up, just kind of jumping back to this other slide for a moment. So again, thinking about now in our programming, in any way that programming has been elevated, how is responsiveness showing up? Thoughtfulness throughout the creative process, inclusivity in decision making, and throughout the whole process of programming, or your role as staff members of an organization, as an independent artist within your community, as a school administrator. How are those things showing up for you? So now jumping back here to the elevation of programming, feel free to share anything in the chat, or feel free to use the raise hand feature and share any of your reflections or ways that your work is operationalizing these ideas. Anything for sharing here? We have some information in the chat about content of music concerts, as well as digital programming, and how digital programming connects to an organic elevation of programming for a wider audience, a larger geographic area of service. Anything else coming up for anyone? Or if you're finding yourself stuck here, that's exciting to share as well. Claire, I don't know if your hand is old or new.
It's new. Hi, Dana. Hi, everyone. We found that our artists in their virtual programming have expressed that they've had better connections with some students who might otherwise have been quiet during a performance or hesitant to raise their hand and ask a question. So at the end of their virtual performance, when they asked for questions, some of the teachers have reported that these students who traditionally don't participate very easily in a large group felt connected to the artist enough to ask a question. And the artists have taken a little bit more time at the end of the performance for Q&A. So it really, strangely, it seems, has allowed them to connect better with some kids in a virtual platform than they had in with 400 kids in a school theater. So that just felt like a real plus. And I think it also drew the artists in a little bit as well. They felt like it gave them a different kind of meaningful experience than they had had in the past.
Thanks for that, Claire. So I'm curious how that discovery of uplifting these students who are engaging digitally, has that informed any changes or edits to other programming or services that Artivate is then planning for the future?
Well, in general, we did about 100 performances last year virtually, and almost every one of them was customized, such detail in terms of logistics and timing and coordination and who was moderating. And we also did about 100 workshops, and likewise, there's just a lot more attention to detail and sensitivity to who's in the room. And I think going forward, we sort of realized that's always been a benchmark of what we do to customize our programming. But I think that we're tailoring it even more specifically to who the audience is, and that going forward will remain the same. And we also offer hybrid, and we're doing some in person, but every scenario now involves a conversation about what will this look like, and what happens if we schedule this in person, then we need to shift it to virtual. So we kind of cover all of those bases, and it just means a lot more time and sensitivity, which I actually think is quite a wonderful byproduct of COVID.
Thanks for all of that, Claire. Yeah, a real highlight in this idea of using responsiveness as a tool to then elevate other offerings and other programming. Thank you for that. All right, let's push forward. Some additional things in the chat. Please check those out if you have not already. So thinking about now next steps, where do we go from here? How do we continue to elevate our role within each scenario within the arts programming? How do we continue to reflect about our level of responsiveness? Or as Dwayne brought up at the very beginning with Karen, how do we provide clarification about this connection between reactivity and responsiveness, and how they feed one another in a way that is impactful and in alignment with the intentions of either an organization or an artist's work? So any thoughts here about kind of taking a step back and looking at the deep dive you took today? How do any of these ideas that you heard, whether they were from your own reflections or something you heard from others, how are they leaving the space with you? And or did something resonate today that you'd like to explore further? Feel free to enter into the chat, or again, feel free to use the raise hand feature if you'd like to share verbally. Anything on your mind as you're gearing up to leave the space today and enter your next session? What has this brought up for you, if anything? Is it validating for the work that you're doing right now? Does it provide any sort of ease in terms of any sort of immediacy that you might be feeling around the work, and making space for some more intentional thought? Anything there? Scout and Pablo, I see that you both have raised hands, but I don't know if they're old or new. So feel free to lower your hand if they're old, or jump in if they're new.
I'll jump in briefly. Thank you.
Sure.
With there's been changing content with Zoom, as people were mentioning, and I've taken the time to not jump into that bandwagon and sort of just give people information, rather following a model that the State Arts Council has done, is opening up for conversations, even non-recorded conversations with artists and creatives, and using that to be to have a more thoughtful approach, and getting feedback from our community in terms of what's necessary, what's needed, what are concerns.
Thank you for that. How beautifully summarized. Julie also lifted up in the chat, reactivity made me think we need to react, but all of our efforts must have longevity. Yeah, and maybe too, Julie, coming back to what Dwayne and Karen said earlier in the session, maybe some of the reactivity is good for kind of urging this thought process forward, and then clarifying which pieces need the longevity and which are good for the now, and then we can let go. Thank you for that, Claire. So Claire shares too in the chat. During a diversity, equity, and inclusion training in the past year, I learned reactive decisions are more rooted in white power structure and taking time and being thoughtful and not insisting on a quick decision is embraced and valued by culture other than the dominant white culture. Thank you for that. And really, again, lifting up what Pablo just summarized here, really it should have been the title of today, which was, how are you opening up for thoughtful conversations before decision making? How are you involving the community? How are you hearing voices? How are you bringing all voices to the table? And how are you connecting through collaborative efforts, maybe in constituents not already served? And thank you, Katie, as well. Katie says this opportunity to reflect has been helpful. Much of this last year has felt very reactive, and it does, because we are. It kind of just feels almost normal in nature to react, because we don't know what's coming. So as soon as something changes, we react to it, right? We get a new CDC list of guidance, we react to it. We remove theater seats, we react to it. So and then Katie says, but in thinking on these questions, I've been able to appreciate where we were able to be responsive. Yes, Roundhouse is certainly responsive in so many ways. Thank you for that work. And where we might have opportunities to be more responsive in the future. So thank you for that. Thank you, Michael. Michael says it is validating, and I'm hoping that my local arts boards of directors are participating today. Thanks for that, Michael. So I want to wrap up as all of you are headed to your next session. So as you're continuing to think about reflective ideas, I'm here for that. And my main goal is to provide continuing professional development through experts in our state, in our country, in our world, who can assist you in what you need, whether that professional development is individualized or as a group, as we're here today. So I will pop my email into the chat in just a moment for you to connect with me at any time. And of course, today is part, the regional summit is part of our fuller, bigger picture of MSAC professional development and how that shows up. So lifting up something that Michael Pugh said in the chat earlier about this paper from Americans for the Arts, Animating Democracy. There came information about aesthetic perspectives, which is a series of ways to evaluate the arts based in 11 different attributes that are based in social change. So our regional art summit that I was chatting about at the beginning, that highlights each of Maryland's 6 regions, will lift up that link that he shared with all of you and that Laura then shared with all of you. It will lift that up in ways that organizations are excelling through kind of a case study series highlighting each of our 6 regions. And again, that begins October 20th. So we hope that you will join us for that. And finally, just a quick note here to apply to be a panelist and to find yourself in the center of the action at MSAC. So if you would like more information about that, feel free to contact me as well. So at this time, Lillian, if you wouldn't mind popping the links for session 2 into the chat so that everyone can travel to their next session. Thanks for that, Lillian. So you have the option to take collage with Kimberly Brown. You have the option to take devising the script with Tavish Forsyth, or you have an opportunity to take a literary art session with Michael Bell. So all of these sessions are hands-on. Again, visual, performing, or literary doesn't necessarily have to be your discipline. You can go to whatever you're feeling today. But they are highly participatory and they are all really focused in making art. So it's really exciting to kind of get back to our roots there. And so we hope that you'll connect with one of these famous, they are famous, with one of these fabulous teaching artists today. Lillian's popped all 3 meets in the script again for you. So feel free to leave this meeting at your convenience and go join one of our fantastic artists. We're so grateful to have them today. And as you're having more reflections and more thoughts about this session, we'll provide you with an evaluation link at the end of today, and we'd love to have your feedback there too. So Lillian's going to hang in here, and I'm going to join Tavish's session to give him some technical support. So Lillian can help guide you should you have any questions. And I look forward to seeing you all then. We'll come back together at 2 o'clock to hear some updates from our collaborators. Rena, in terms of a recording of the session, if you'd like to, you can reach out to Lillian and she'll drop her email into the chat as well. And we'll be able to provide a recording that way. And as promised, I will pass along my email in the chat as well. And yes, Megan, the link for the 2 p.m. session is the same as this one. And we'll also share it at the end of the art making session as well. So we'll know to come back together to this one link. Thanks, Denise. All right, really wonderful seeing everyone today. And I'll see you in your art making session. Have a great time.
Okay, I just placed the 3 links in the chat again. So all you have to do is click the blue link next to the session you want to join, and it will automatically open that tab for you. So you can close out of this tab and switch over. We have collage with Kimberly Brown, devising the script with Tavish Forsyth, and literary arts with Michael Bell. And if you need any assistance, please feel free to unmute or write in the chat. For the people still on the call, do you need any assistance joining one of the 1 p.m. art making sessions? Please let me know and I can assist you.
Please. This is Heather speaking.
Hi, Heather. What can I help you with?
Could you
I'm
just
sorry.
repeat, I'm sorry, what you said to do?
Okay, I will put the links in the chat again right now.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So you open the chat and you just click the blue URL, the meet.google, that is next to the session you want to join.
Okay,
And
great. Got it.
great. That is the combined group with Tavish. So Tavish is a theater artist, but he will be addressing it to all performing arts.